In the late 1980s, Milli Vanilli seemed to arrive fully formed, two striking performers with long braids, glamorous clothes, athletic dance moves, and songs engineered for radio dominance. To millions of fans, Fab Morvan and Rob Pilatus were the sound and image of a new pop era, where dance, R&B, rap, disco, and European studio polish blended into something instantly commercial. But behind the choreography and chart success was a secret that would become one of the most famous scandals in music history. The voices on the records were not theirs. That revelation destroyed their career almost overnight, but the full story is more complicated than a simple tale of fraud. It is also a story about producers, marketing, image-making, ambition, and an industry that often rewarded appearance as much as sound. Milli Vanilli was created in Munich, Germany, in 1988 by producer Frank Farian. Farian was not new to manufacturing pop success. He understood that records and performers could be assembled like different parts of the same product: the right beat, the right hook, the right faces, and the right story. For Milli Vanilli, he hired real vocalists to sing the recordings, including Brad Howell, John Davis, Charles Shaw, Jody Rocco, and Linda Rocco. But the public-facing performers were Fab Morvan and Rob Pilatus, two charismatic young men who could dance, pose, and sell the fantasy visually. The arrangement separated the music from the image in a way that was not entirely new in pop, but Milli Vanilli would push that separation to a breaking point. Fab Morvan and Rob Pilatus were not random figures pulled from nowhere. They had presence, style, and hunger. Morvan, from France, and Pilatus, who had German and American roots, fit the visual language of late 1980s pop television perfectly. MTV had changed what audiences expected from stars. A hit song now needed a face, a body, a dance routine, and a video identity. Farian saw that Fab and Rob could become that identity. The problem was that the music business sold Milli Vanilli as a singing duo, not as dancers fronting a studio project. That distinction mattered. If the public had been told from the beginning that Milli Vanilli was a visual performance built around other singers, the reaction may have been different. Instead, the illusion was treated as reality. The first major breakthrough came with the album All or Nothing, released in Europe in 1988. The sound was sleek, catchy, and perfectly timed for dance pop's global rise. Then Arista Records repackaged the material for the American market as Girl You Know It's True in 1989. The US version became a phenomenon. The album spent 8 weeks at number 1 on the Billboard 200 chart, a sign of enormous mainstream penetration. It produced 3 number 1 singles, placing Milli Vanilli among the biggest pop acts of the year. Their songs were built for repetition, big choruses, polished rhythms, and emotional directness. For listeners, it did not feel like a niche studio experiment. It felt like the arrival of a major new act. At the peak of their fame, Milli Vanilli were everywhere. They appeared on television, toured, gave interviews, and performed to audiences who believed they were hearing the same voices from the records. In 1990, their commercial dominance was recognized with 3 American Music Awards and the Grammy Award for Best New Artist. That Grammy mattered because it placed them within the official story of musical achievement. It told the public that this was not just a manufactured pop craze, but an artistically recognized debut. In hindsight, the award became the symbol of the scandal. If music's most prestigious institution could honor an act without knowing who actually sang the records, then the controversy was no longer only about Milli Vanilli. It was about the machinery that validates pop stardom. Rumors began to build before the truth was officially confirmed. Some listeners and industry observers noticed that Fab and Rob's speaking voices, shaped by French and German accents, did not seem to match the vocals on the records. Suspicion grew stronger after a live performance malfunction, when a repeated vocal phrase exposed the dependence on playback. In pop concerts, lip-syncing was not unheard of, especially for highly choreographed performances. But Milli Vanilli's case was different because the issue was not simply whether they sang live on a particular night. The deeper question was whether they had ever sung the hit recordings at all. Once that question entered public conversation, the polished image started to crack. Fab and Rob eventually pressured Frank Farian to let them sing. This detail is important because it complicates the idea that they were simply masterminds of deception. They were the faces of the project, and they benefited from fame, money, and attention. But they were also trapped inside a system designed by others. If they admitted the truth, their careers could collapse. If they stayed silent, the deception continued. In November 1990, Farian publicly confirmed that the vocals were provided by other singers. The announcement landed like an explosion. The public had not merely discovered a technical trick. Fans felt that an emotional relationship had been violated. They had bought records, watched performances, and believed in a duo that, vocally, did not exist as advertised. The backlash was immediate and severe. Radio stations pulled Milli Vanilli songs from rotation. The Grammy for Best New Artist was revoked, an extraordinary act that made the scandal permanent in music history. Arista deleted Girl You Know It's True from its catalog and offered refunds to customers after class action lawsuits. The punishment was not only commercial, it was symbolic. Milli Vanilli became shorthand for fakery. Jokes about lip-syncing followed them everywhere. The real session singers, who had provided the voices behind the hits, received new attention, but the scandal did not simply transfer fame to them. Instead, the entire project became toxic. What had been celebrated as polished pop was suddenly treated as evidence of manipulation. Frank Farian defended Milli Vanilli as a kind of art project, combining musical and visual elements. From one angle, that defense points to a real truth about pop music: records are often collaborative constructions. Producers, songwriters, session musicians, stylists, video directors, choreographers, and label executives all shape what audiences experience as a single artist. But Farian's defense failed because the project had been marketed in a way that hid the collaboration rather than acknowledging it. Pop can be theatrical. It can be artificial. It can use characters and concepts. The problem was consent and transparency. Audiences were not asked to participate in a known illusion. They were sold authenticity while being denied the basic fact of who was singing. After the scandal, Farian tried to salvage the music itself. Songs planned for a second Milli Vanilli album were repurposed and released in 1991 as The Moment of Truth under the name The Real Milli Vanilli. This version did not feature Morvan and Pilatus as the frontmen. The name itself revealed the damage. The public now needed reassurance that the voices belonged to the people presented. But the magic of the original formula was gone. The original Milli Vanilli had worked because image and sound, even falsely connected, created a compelling package. Once separated, neither side could easily recover the same cultural force. The real Milli Vanilli may have clarified who sang, but the broader audience had moved on from trust to ridicule. Fab Morvan and Rob Pilatus attempted to rebuild their careers as Rob and Fab. In 1993, they released an album using their own voices. It sold only about 2,000 copies. That failure shows how difficult it was for them to escape the scandal's shadow. The public had demanded authenticity, but when they finally tried to offer it, many listeners were no longer interested. Their names had become punchlines before they could become artists on their own terms. Later, Farian produced a planned comeback album called Back and in Attack, but it was cancelled after Rob Pilatus died from a drug overdose in 1998. His death gave the story a tragic dimension that the earlier jokes had often ignored. In later years, the cultural memory of Milli Vanilli began to shift. Fab Morvan gained rights to the Milli Vanilli name and continued to perform, singing live. Documentaries and dramatizations released in 2023 renewed interest in the story, not only as a scandal but as a case study in exploitation. Many commentators came to see Morvan and Pilatus with more sympathy, as young performers caught inside an industry driven by greed, image, and speed. They made choices, but they also operated under powerful producers and labels that profited from the illusion until it became inconvenient. Milli Vanilli's story still warns against deception, but it also asks a sharper question. When pop stardom is manufactured by a whole machine, why did only the faces take the fall? If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.